Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending the fiduciary accounting course that we're offering through the Contra Costa County Law Library. We've been given the class, I don't know, 6 years or something like that, quite a while. We originally started out to help the judges because they were getting a lot of reports they couldn't process. And we've been giving it every couple months since that time. And it's proven helpful, especially we're aiming more for pro per self-represented people, but others, everyone needs to do court accounting for certain types of cases, guardianships, conservatorships. Sometimes under powers of attorney, they have to do accounting. And then optionally, trusts, if they have to report to the court, then trusts have to use this format. And it's nothing like anything. I'm a CPA and an attorney. And when I was in accounting school, they didn't talk about this at all, none. And it's complete, governed by the California Probate Code. They have fiduciary accounting across the United States, but California is unique in their approach to it. And it's just something that you have to get exposed to. There's no way to get it by osmosis. And if you're an executor or for a probate or conservator, you have to do the accounting. And if you hire a third party and they do it wrong, you might be personally liable to have it done right again. So you need to really verify your third party providers that they understand it and can demonstrate their skills. The class is divided up into three parts. We have the beginning, my assistant Tamara Brown, who's an LDA, a notary, uh, a mediator. She's got all kinds of credentials. She's going to start out talking about the inventory and appraisal, which is the asset portion of the forms. Then I will come in and talk about the GC 400 sum and all the accounting forms and schedules. And then the last hour, Tamara will come back and explain how to fill out the court petition to have your accounting presented and approved by the court. And if you have questions, go ahead and ask the questions. If it starts running behind schedule-wise, we might defer the questions until after each presentation. And there's also a chat section that you can write questions in. The course is pretty free form. We have different schedules and we'll explain the different schedules that we use. We got the material from the handbook for conservators that's in your materials. It's free online. It was approved by the Judicial Council, which is the board of directors for the California Supreme Court. And that book is also available online for free. At this point, I'd like to give the host back to Tamara, if I can get the software to do that. And then I'll be back after an hour or so. Here's
Yeah,
Tamara
just
Brown.
don't forget, Rex, to let people in if they come in late.
Yes, ma'am. I will do that. Here's Tamara. Okay, you should be host now.
I got you. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody can see my screen and it looks like an inventory and appraisal form.
Yes, it is, but there's an overlap of a screen underneath it. There we go. You might want to open it up to full width.
Yeah, then it goes, there you go.
Great.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started in saying what is the beginning when you need to do your accounting. I'm gonna go through how do you even start? What do you begin with? When I am doing an accounting, I do them for many law firms. I also do them if there's an opposing or an objection to an accounting. I am hired by law firms to review somebody else's accounting and provide my own feedback on what I see, what might look wrong, what I would have the attorney object to in the accounting, and things like that. So I'm going to go through what I'm looking for and how you would start, or what you're going to put together when you first decide that you need to start an accounting. So the first thing if I was hired by somebody, or if you're going to start an accounting, the first thing you're going to start with is your inventory and appraisal. Now, the only difference, and people should realize, is a trust administration will not have this inventory and appraisal. So, and Katie asked, do we also have the documents in a handout? They would have been mailed to you, emailed to you, honey. And Rex can email you if you want to throw your email in real quick, the chat. He can email you the slides so you can watch them as we do it. But so what this is this is what an inventory and appraisal would look like. Again, if you're doing trust administration, you don't have to do the inventory and appraisal. This is more for probates, conservatorships, guardianships. So if you look at this right up top, I would be able to see the person's name who's filing this, whether it is a law firm or whether it is you, who have your name and address up here. If you're a pro I see your phone number, your email address, who is the conservator, the county that the case is filed in. I gather all this information. Now, this isn't important to me, and you won't use it for your accounting, but it helps give me a little bit more information. Then right here, I'm either going to see the decedent's name, so that would be marked if it's a probate, or this person is a conservatee, would be a conservatorship, or this person, if this box is marked, it's a guardianship. Again, notice you don't see a box for trustor, settlor, whatever you want to call the person, even if they're deceased, unless it's a probate, which means no trust typically. You would not have to do this form. So right now I can see I'm doing an accounting for Jeannie, and she is a conservatee. I'm going to assume I'd be working with the conservator or the law firm to prepare this accounting. I also see the case number. This case number I do put on my accounting forms. And I'm going to start with this side right here. This says inventory and appraisal. Now, there's a couple ways that throughout cases that an inventory and appraisal is done. Sometimes there is a partial, which means only part of the assets you are reporting. And if somebody sends me over to start an accounting in inventory and appraisal and only partials marked, that is my cue. I don't have all the assets. So I'm going to ask for, okay, I want to see also the final. I'm always asking, okay, is there also a supplement? And I will tell you what these different categories kind of mean real quick. Partial is, say, you only want to report half of the assets. Say it's, there's a house, so you can do an inventory and appraisal and send it to the probate referee for the house. But you haven't been able to get to the bank and figure out how much cash is in bank accounts, because That's a tiny bit more challenging. You might do a partial that would read just the house, and I'll show you an example once we get further in the form. Then I would need to ask for a second partial, which I would also want to see that's a final, that would be the cash assets. Or a supplement means you've turned in an inventory and appraisal already to the court, and you found an asset later that you did not add, or you didn't tell the court about. So what you would do is then do a supplement telling the court, okay, I want to add one more asset or two or three to a final I've already turned in. This one's really important. Corrected. A corrected would mean, if I'm looking at it, that you previously submitted an inventory and appraisal. And what happened was you stated, let's say on this date, March 8th, we'll get into this further, that there was $5 in checking account 1234. You realized once you got the bank statement, oh geez, I was wrong. It's not $5 in that checking account. It should have been $15, let's say, and you forgot the one or didn't type the one. Then you would file a corrected, which means, hey, court, I just want to let you know that on line item number 1 of the original filed inventory and appraisal that I did, I incorrectly stated that the balance in the account was $5. It should have been 15, so I'm filing this corrected copy. Now, when I get an accounting and I need to prepare one for somebody, I have to look at the corrected copy also and cross off, okay, what is that correcting? So I don't accidentally put both of them on there, um, and realize, oh, now I've overstated income. So I'm really looking at all of these scenarios, and so should you when you're preparing your own accounting. So if you're doing it for a conservatorship, you want to make sure, okay, do I have all the information I need to start preparing? Please don't worry about this reappraisal for sale. I could get into why you would use it, but it wouldn't be for accounting, so I'm not going to get into that part. There's also, you could mark them property tax certificate. I've never even seen one of these marked in the many years I've been doing this, so I'm going to skip that portion also.
Excuse me a second, Tamara. I've given you control of the meeting as the host. I hear bells like somebody's coming in. And could you do me a favor and see if there are participants to let into the meeting, please?
Yes, every time I see something come up, I'm letting them in.
Okay, great. Continue.
So, one of the most important things is this date right here. You have to be very careful on what is that date. It can get confusing, it can throw off an accounting. I will tell you 9 times out of 10 that I get these inventory and appraisals, this date is inaccurate right here. And if it is, and I'm given the project, I cannot start the project until this is corrected. Very, very frequent that this is wrong, and you have to be very careful on what this date is. So I'm going to go through it for you. If you have a decedent's estate, meaning the person is deceased, and typically you'd be in probate. Again, this does not apply to trust administration. But if this box is marked, this date should be the date of death of this person. If it's a conservatorship, you have to be very careful on what is this date. This date is either if you got temporary appointment, which means the court granted you a temporary conservator prior to the court hearing your permanent papers, then this box right here is not when you became the permanent conservator, it's when you became the temporary conservator. And the other thing that's very important is this is the date you received your letters. Typically, letters for a probate are DE 150. With a guardianship, it could be if it's temporary. I don't remember the form number, but I know if it's permanent, it's GC 340, 350, 350. I think 340 is the order. Please don't quote me on my numbers. I'm thinking about it off the top of my head, but this is the date of letters. Sometimes I, being a little bit more tech savvy, will look up this case because I'm able to look up cases in the court, and I verify this information. It just helps me because I myself, if somebody's paying me to do this project, I don't want to get it done based on this form and then have to start completely over and charge them again because they had this date wrong. So I do a little bit of looking. If you are preparing this for yourself, you have to be very careful because if this date is wrong and you submit your accounting to the court, they will automatically reject your entire accounting because you started it on the wrong date. Now, I must also say that you only use this in inventory and appraisal on your first accounting. For conservatorships, you have an accounting due after the first year, and then every 2 years after that, unless the court tells you otherwise. For a trust, typically it's due 1 year after you became the successor trustee. It can also be due, say you were a co-trustee with a trustor, and that the original settler said, I don't want to do it anymore and resigned, and you became the successor trustee. You have to remember what that date is because it is very important that your accounting starts the day you became that trustee and goes 1 year after. Now, you have to be careful with trusts to really read them because some trusts, typically trusts say 1 year. But I've recently seen a couple that want the trustee to account every 3 months, which seems absolutely absurd because it's so much work. But you have to follow what the trust instructs you to do. So if the trust says it's due every 3 months, you better be on top of this. Okay, so we're going to assume this date is right, and we're going to go forward and make sure that everything is going to be as of this date. So, next portion of the form states the appraisal by the representative. So, in a probate, you'd be the administrator, guardian if it's a minor, conservator if it's you have a conservatee, and attachment one. that is the only attachment that you can give value to. So we will go through what that is in just a minute. And then you have attachment 2, which is for the probate referee. Now, a lot of people, again, a trust, those words won't even be part of your vocabulary. But for a decedent's estate, a conservatorship, and a minor, you may have a probate referee, but you will only be appointed that probate referee if there are any assets other than cash. If you only have cash that you're marshaling or taking control of or whatever, then you will not have a probate referee and you will not have an attachment to. And before I go through the rest of the form, I'm going to go to the attachments. So this is what attachment 1 will look like. If you'll notice, the cover page that we were just on is the DE, which means decedent estate, so probate, 160, or GC, guardianship or conservatorship, GC, 040. If you notice, when we get to attachment, you're on one number up, DE161 or GC041. This form will be blank. You will need to indicate the name of the estate. Again, you're going to pull this from this line and the case number. You are going to need to put in attachment 1. Now, what are things I would see on attachment 1, or what are things you would indicate on attachment 1? Okay, cash. Now, typically I do mine very different than this, but I will just indicate cash. I don't say where it's found. I don't put, in what I've got 5 $1 bills and a coffee can worth of change, and I don't indicate all that. I just indicate cash. Now, when I give the value, again, remember this important date. It's not the cash today that they have in their pocket, it's the cash they had on that March 8th date. Moving down, I'm going to indicate a checking account. Please remember, public information, and especially if you have a conservatorship, do not ever give a full account number. The court knows what it is. You don't need to tell the court more. You give either the last 4 digits of the account number or last 5 digits. I do 4, but that's completely up to you how you do it. The court will know what you're talking about, even if they match one number. They will get what you're saying, or they will ask you in an examiner note. So, balance in the checking account, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't ever indicate the bank name or the address, especially if it's something like Wells Fargo. I'm going to have no clue what branch that the Wells Fargo account was open in. They could have moved. It could have been something from an account they've had since they were 10. I mean, who knows? I don't indicate that. All I will state is, I don't even put balance. I state Wells Fargo checking account 1, 2, 3, 4 and the dollar amount. So what's important about this? When I'm starting in accounting, the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at this date. Okay, I got it. I'm asking for a bank statement because I need to prepare the accounting. I'm going to go look for this account number. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sure on March 8th that the balance in the account says this exact total. If it does not state that exact total, I'm stopping right then and there and saying I can't go any further. I don't see this number that you have on your inventory and appraisal is accurate, and therefore I don't want to continue and bill you for something that the court will never accept. The option at that point is that, remember how I said you go back and file a corrected and go, okay, Tam, I just filed a corrected. Now here's the correct balance, so on and so forth. Again, if your bank statement and this number does not match, do not start your accounting. It's going to be wrong. You're going to be off. You're going to have all kinds of issues. Okay, so going on, now we have a savings account, same thing as the checking account. I'll put Wells Fargo savings account 3456. Balance this number. I'm double checking before I'm even starting the accounting. I want to see this amount on that bank statement on this March 8th date. If the number's any different, I'm not moving forward till it's corrected. You would indicate a CD account. Again, I don't put in all this information. I'm going to put Wells Fargo Bank CD account 5432. That's all I'm going to put there. And I'm going to put the dollar amount. Now, I don't see this very often, but it's part of the example in what we used to see is pensions and Social Security used to arrive via check as opposed to direct deposit. So if you are going through, so as a conservator and as a probate administrator, one of your duties is to go into, and it's very important for a trustee also, one of the first thing you need to go in and do is open their mail and see if there's anything in their mail that maybe it's a check that came as a refund. Maybe it's a dividend that comes from a stock portfolio. Maybe it's a check from a granddaughter saying happy birthday. It could be anything, but you're responsible for that. So, say there is an uncashed check that you have, you would indicate uncashed check. I don't put all this information in either, but I'll put uncashed check from granddaughters as a birthday gift. You also might indicate, say for instance, there's a probate case and your conservatee is going to inherit money from their parents, but the probate case has not closed, right? So you're waiting for it. You would indicate here money from probate case. You would give the case number, the county that it's in, to tell the court you are expecting inheritance from somebody else. You are expecting money from somebody else and you believe it will come in. Now, a lot of times I see with an inheritance coming from a different an inheritance coming from a probate. At the beginning, they think you're going to get, let's say, 200,000. But by the time they close their probate, they had extra expenses they didn't anticipate, or something happened in that other case that you may only get 150,000. Don't worry about correcting that right now, because you won't know that answer. You will correct it later in the accounting. So same thing, Social Security, if you had an uncashed check, you would put the amount here. And this again is a dividend. So that came from a stock portfolio. Right now, typically all of them that I see are reinvested. So I don't see this often, but in trusts or sometimes conservatorships, if you have certain annuity accounts where there is a requirement that the conservatee takes a specific distribution, then you would either get it monthly in a check, or right now I believe everybody does direct deposit. So now that I look at all these totals, I'm literally taking everything from this form and I'm transferring it to my accounting forms. Then what I do is go back and verify this total at the bottom is the same total that I have in my accounting numbers and my cash I'm going to start with. This number also, if you notice, the 57, will transfer right back here because you valued it. You know what the total is. Now for attachment 2, and then I'll stop for questions. And now for attachment 2, it must be left blank because the only one who can value attachment 2 is the probate referee. So let's go to attachment 2. I apologize. Same form number, name up here, case number. It's going to say attachment 2. Now, everything on attachment 2 is what has to be valued by the probate referee. When you're talking about what has to be valued by the probate referee, it is everything except cash. It's pretty simple. If it's not cash, it has to be valued by the probate referee. There is one exception. Say the cash, it's cash, and say it's coins, and it's old coins. Maybe it's military old coins. Maybe it's a different country's old coins. Maybe it's an inherited coin collection. Coin collections have completely different values. So even if you say, let me use the example, a Susan B. Anthony dollar. Yes, it's a dollar, but if it's a certain year and it's made of a certain material and it's got a special something on it, it could be worth 10 times the dollar that it's, or even more than that. So in that case, that's a collectible and it's no longer considered cash, even though it's really cash. Now, the question that came in, I don't know what a bullion is, and I'm not 100% sure about crypto and probate. What you should do, or what you can do, is if you had a question on if a probate referee has to value a asset, you can always look up online the probate referee guide, and it's a free PDF that every probate referee has to use, and you can look up to see whether the probate referee should value it or whether it goes on attachment 1. And so you would do a search through the PDF to look for whatever you're looking for and say, do I value this, or does a probate referee value it? And you could always say, put it on attachment 2 if you think it is something a probate referee has to value, and the probate referee says, I don't value these type of assets, it'll just come back to you, and then you know you have to put it on your attachment 1. But let's move on. You're going to give as much information as you can about the real property. What's really important is you need to tell the probate referee if it's 100% owned, 50% owned, 25% owned, What is the percentage of ownership? Because that makes a huge difference. And you will not know the legal description likely. I myself have software so I can look up what a legal description is, but a lot of other people don't have that ability. So you would just put 100% interest in real property in the city of Newport Beach, County of Orange, state of California, commonly known as, and put the address, and you would say if you knew the APN number. Now, other things that are really important to tell the probate referee, because they do not physically go look at the house most of the time. If there is something like the entire roof is gone, the entire roof is in shambles, the entire roof needs to be replaced, indicate that to the probate referee because that has to do with value. You can say things like, and I don't mean this in a bad light, but you can say things like it was a hoarder house. That's very common. Typically, a probate referee knows that a hoarder house is not kept up to the same level as other houses. So the floors might be rotted, the walls could have mold, there could be other things. There could be rat feces. Carpets are probably destroyed. There's things that go along with just that basic knowledge. You want to indicate everything you can to the probate referee so they can value appropriately. You don't want to get back an inventory and appraisal that says this house is worth $2 million, and you know for a fact you couldn't get more than $1 million, because now you're troubling yourself with a loss of 100,000 before you even start. So please give the probate referee all the information you can. Same thing about a vacation house. Household furniture and fixtures. Typically, this means bed, table, sofa, refrigerator, dishwasher, things of that nature. Now, if there are other things like an antique armoire or specific antique high dollar value items in the house, please don't lump them in the household furniture, because household furniture is typically given a value of like $500 or a very small value. So separate out those things that may have more value to them. Shares. In this case, be very careful. It can get somewhat difficult. They state that there's 1425 shares in safeguard. You must not lump your investment mutual funds together. If the mutual funds contain 100 different securities or funds, you must list each one separately. So it might be $1,425 of one share in Apple, one share in Microsoft, one share in Adobe, one, I could go on and on. You have to list them separately. Do not ever lump them together, because the probate referee values them separately. The other thing I also give the probate referee is, if you look at the mutual fund account, typically each investment will have its own little 4-digit code that tells you a little bit more about that stock. Katie, I'll get to you in 1 second. I see your message. So I give the code. It's a 4-digit code, and it helps the probate referee really recognize the asset. Give me 1 second, Katie. I'll get right to you. And then there's 7 U.S. savings bonds. You're not allowed to do this either. You have to list each one out separately. They will have different series numbers. So you're going to have a list of 7 individual $100 US savings bonds with different series numbers. List them separately, do not lump them. And then lastly, we have indicated on here a diamond wedding ring and 2 carats. Why is this important? I'm going to tell you a really quick story about something that happened on a probate case I was involved in, and it'll tell you a big reason why. So, say mom had her initial wedding ring that was a smaller one because maybe at the time dad gave it to her. He could have been in the military, traveling, whatever. It was a smaller, little, beautiful ring, but it was what it was. Later on, maybe for an anniversary, dad goes, "Hey," or husband, "Hey, I'm going to buy you a new ring." They get a new ring. So now you have two. What happened in a probate case is there was a will. I know it was more a trust, but it was the trustee. So the trustee was a daughter, and she had a
Okay.
son, and then her sister also had a son. And the trust said that the 2 carat or the 2 carat, which was the later ring, went to grandson A, and the first wedding ring went to grandson B. And Rex, I can hear you talking on screen. But anyway, grandson B. So the trustee, her son was grandson B. He was to get the smaller one. Well, the trustee kind of thought, I don't know her thought process, or maybe it was an accident. I just don't know. And I'm not going to insinuate, but she gave her son the bigger ring and was going to give the other grandson the smaller one. The grandson B, who got the bigger ring, proposed to a woman, gave her the ring. Can anybody tell you where this is going to end up going? Gave her the bigger ring, and guess what happened? He had to go ask for it back because that was not his ring. He was to get the smaller ring, and I can't imagine being in his shoes. Or the woman he gave the ring to, and having to ask for it back after she completely fell in love with it. So, anyway, it's really important to list everything because also all the beneficiaries are going to look at this list. One of the things that happens is a beneficiary gets this inventory and appraisal. They look at it and they say, "Oh my God, they didn't list everything. Now they're trying to hide it and steal it." So they're running to court, telling the court, "You're hiding assets. You've stole it. There was a motorcycle you didn't put on here. There was a collectible car you didn't put on here. There's all this jewelry you're going to keep for yourself." I mean, people get crazy when it comes to inheriting and what they're expecting. You'll notice zero value here because the probate referee will value it, and the box is blank down here. And then you'll also know back up top that there's zero value here because the probate referee will fill it in. And I'm going to get to Katie's question, so give me 1 second. Can I ask, what about when the conservatives' assets are shared with another person? Example, for household furniture owned by the spouse, investments, or community property. Okay, very good question, honey. You have to split things. So if you say, you would indicate in that case half of the household furniture and fixtures, or 50%, if that's a better word you like to use. And then when you get to the investments that are community property, if you would state 50% ownership of one share of Apple and continue on, just like the house, you want to list 50% ownership of this real property because the probate referee is only going to give a value that's 50%. So you really want to make sure that's clear. Otherwise, you're giving beneficiaries an idea that the estate is worth 1 million and it's really only worth 500,000 because she only owns half. Does that make sense, Katie? Did I answer you, sweetheart?
Yeah, I think that does make sense. So for things like someone's own retirement account, that would be fully theirs. But for things that are like investments that they made as community property, that would just be at 50% only. It
That's
would say
correct.
50%.
And
Okay.
remember, the only thing you have to remember if you're doing a probate state or a conservatorship or minors, this is not trust. If you're doing this, remember is specifically for a conservatorship and a minors account. You only want to indicate what the court needs to take control of. So you may have the house that's in a trust and a bank account that's in the name of the conservatee. You're only going to report to the court what's in the name of the conservatee. A court cannot take control of a house if it's in the name of a trust already, because the trust owns that house or has title or has responsibility to the house, not the court. Remember, when you're doing this, you're telling the court what they are taking control of. So be careful with conservatorships specifically to make sure. In fact, I just did a whole accounting that I had to redo for somebody else because they put the house on the conservatorship inventory and appraisal. They put three things. They put the house, oh, they put jewelry, and they put house jewelry, and there was one other thing. I can't even think about what it was. But the three things they put on the house, when I asked to look at the copy of the trust, because I knew there was a trust, because I actually went and ran the deed on the property to verify it was in their name and so on and so forth. I saw it was in the trust. So I went back and asked the conservatee, did you mean to put this on the inventory and appraisal? Because I see it's in trust. And if it's in trust, a court can take control of it because somebody else is taking control already. And she was wrong. She had to correct it. I had to start the counting over and so on and so forth. So be careful on these, what you're telling the court you're controlling if you're not actually controlling it. Now, it doesn't matter if you are the conservator and the trustee, you do not put on here any trust assets. You would only put a cash account. In this case, we ended up with two just accounts that she didn't put in the trust name. She left it in her personal name, and so it was to be reported to the court. Any other questions? Well, I have 7 minutes to complete this form, and then it's Rex's turn. So, any questions before I go on?
I have one really quick question. What if an account is in the name of the conservatee and the conservator because they're married?
That's fine, honey. Typically, I know there's so many laws, and you have to figure out really what happens on a joint account is with a bank. The law states that that's considered joint tenancy. So if and when the conservatee passes or the surviving spouse passes, it automatically by law transfers to the other person. So would that be part of the conservatorship? Um, if the conservatee is the conservator, you really, it's dependent upon, and that's something you would really want to ask an attorney, but it's going to be dependent upon, do you really have to report, if you're the conservator and the conservatee, every bit of money that goes out? Because some of that money in that account is for your own, the conservator's own personal use, and you don't want that spread across the court accounting. I think what I would do in that case is indicate the account on attachment 1 and state the account is jointly owned with ABC, whoever the person is, jointly owned, and give a zero value. But you're telling the court, I acknowledge there's an account, but they really should not have to account for it because a lot of it's going to be their own personal expenses, which is not up to court supervision. Is that helpful? Okay, I'm gonna
Yes,
go
thank
real.
you.
Thank you, honey. I'm gonna go real quick. So the rest of the form, when you're looking at it for an accounting standpoint, it really doesn't matter to me what it says, but let me just go through it quickly. This box will be marked if this is a final. This box will be marked if it's a partial. So that's how I'm kind of reading that. This, you on number 4, you either need to mark no probate referee, which will tell me there's no attachment to assets for the probate referee value. That also tells me all you have is cash. Or you will get mark this box if a probate referee was given to you, and you would put the date of the order where the judge stamped on there the probate referee's name. Down here would indicate a box that once you take control, if there's any real property, it is up to you as the trustee or as the conservator to notify the county assessor that you've taken over and now you're responsible for any property taxes and everything else. I'm going to answer a question. What happens if a domestic partner becomes a trust administration in probate and breach their fiduciary duty? That's a whole different thing than what we're teaching right here, honey. You would have to get that question answered by a attorney.
What everybody does.
So you're gonna come down. It's gonna be dated, and Lowry is gonna be the one that is the conservator. Bond information down here is important, but not for the accounting. Either the bond's gonna be waived or the court issued a bond. You would indicate the bond amount. You're gonna either mark sufficient or insufficient. So say, for instance, the court said you have to post a $20,000 bond. I immediately look up here and see there's 57,000 in cash. Just real quickly, somebody pipe in. Would I mark the box sufficient or insufficient if my bond is 20,000 but my cash is 57? Come on, quickly. Okay, I'm gonna
Sufficient.
Huh?
Sufficient.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, $20,000 bond, but you have 57 in cash. Your bond has to cover all of your cash.
4 days.
You are insufficient because if you should steal all of this cash and the bond company, the court notifies the bond company to return the cash, the bond company can only return 20,000 and you've taken 57,000. It's insufficient. Usually the court wants the bond to cover all the cash.
I was tired yesterday and I was
Rex, I can hear your entire conversation. Second time I'm telling you.
shit.
Yes, shit. Okay, page 2. Page 2 has the estate of, this is going to be copy forward. This will not be filled out. This will be filled out by the probate referee, and they will date and sign it, and they will return all forms to you. And this will have a value. This will be completed. And this is what I need to start the accounting. So when I move to the accounting, I'm going to make sure I have written down every single one of these line items, and I have made sure my total comes to their total. And you'll see once we start the accounting, I'm going to list all of these, and I'm going to list the value given by the probate referee, and I'm going to verify my total is their total. And that's how I'm going to start the accounting. So, any questions before I release this to Rex? And then I will be back in an hour because I'm going to teach you how to submit your accounting to the court and get approval. Any questions just on the inventory and appraisal? I love you guys. Either you're sleeping or you have no questions and I'm that good. I'm not sure which one, but I'll take it that I'm that good. Um, so I will be back in an hour. I will transfer now to Rex. I'm gonna move it over to him. Um, make host. Oh, Katie, answer. I just saw your hand up. Was that from earlier, honey?
Oh, it was from just now when you asked if there were questions, but I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time
Go
with
for
all the
it.
questions.
Ask, sweetheart, ask.
All right, thanks. So you said that the forms GC040 and GC041 are only filed with the first accounting, but subsequent filings don't need this because this is only for the initial one, right?
Correct. So when you do a second accounting, so say your first one's already done, you
Mhm.
are going to take all of the assets from the first accounting on the assets at end of account period, whatever that says of that first accounting, you're going to take all that data and make it your beginning asset total, as if that first accounting is your inventory and appraisal, and you're going to transfer only the assets at the end of the account period. That becomes your beginning assets on your second one.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Rex, your turn. You got control. I see your screen.
Okay, good. So I set back up as a host. Let me get my platform set up for you. What we're going to be doing is going through the conservator handbook and the judicial council forms. There are some other things that I wanted to show you. What we're going to be going through are court forms. And I also wanted to show you, it's in your material, handout number 2, is an example of a way that we're not going to go through in great detail of doing accountings, but the accountings are oftentimes done in an Excel spreadsheet kind of format. And I've given you an example you can look at more thoroughly. Can everybody see a page that says summary of account?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So this in handout number 2 is an Excel spreadsheet version, and you can use that. The court will accept it. This is a summary of account page that shows all the beginning money, money came in, money went out, and the ending. The court will not accept this form by itself. It has to be combined in with, we're going to spend a lot of time on it, the GC 400. And this just is a spreadsheet version of the GC 400 that we're going to spend a lot of time on. The way this accounting shows is there's carry value, like what Tamara just went over, in a spreadsheet format. And then on your second account, you not only have the carry value, but then you have a column for estimated market value at the end of your account period. The essence of this account is that you have income and expenses by category. So you're still accounting for every penny that came in and every penny that went out. But in this case, interest income shows by vendor, Charles Schwab, dividends. And so that's on the income side. And then the disbursements show what category it belonged to. So if you're really good at spreadsheets and you want the different format, you can use this as a guide. The other thing you might want to include in your accounting is a notice to beneficiaries if you're doing an accounting on it for a trust, that they only have 180 days to object in court, or that your accounting is deemed to be approved. So handout number 2. Another handout that I'm going to explain, or just this is an example. If you have a trust and you're not getting an accounting and you want one, I've included a form where you can demand that the trustee give you an accounting, and they have 60 days to do that, or they could get sanctions from the court for not complying with the probate code. Handout number 3, I'm going over with you for reference. This is a lot of material, some of it taken from court web pages, that it gives another explanation of what's included in a court accounting. And then we at our office have a rudimentary Excel worksheet that we make available to get started on, and it's $150 for this format template that shows in the income and expenses by categories. Okay, and there's the form for it. The other item in the handout number 3 are these I got from the probate referees in Contra Costa County. When they get an accounting in, they go through a checklist to see if it meets their requirements. And this is an example of one. So we had one on trust, one for conservatorships, and it gives probate code sections. It's a nice little cheat sheet. It's for a final accounting. And it's just reference material. If you end up with an accounting that you have to split between principal and interest, it's a really complicated process, and you might need help in that, because doing accounting when you split principal and interest comes about when you have a split interest trust where one beneficiary gets the income and a different beneficiary gets the remainder. Okay, so in our material, in the PDFs, I have, it's page 23, but in the page numbers, we're going to page 21 in the lower left. And I point this out so that you can keep up and follow along. You won't get lost. So there's 4 zeros and a 21. We're going to spend a lot of time on this particular form. If you printed them out and you have a yellow tab, you could put a yellow sticky note, because we're going to work on schedules and go back and forth to this form. This is it's like bicycle hub, where everything goes to the middle, and this is the form. All these other schedules link back to this form, and it's called the GC 400 sum. Unfortunately, all of the forms are GC 400, and then the next digits tell what it really does. This is an approved judicial council form. Before I get into the meat of it, the heading you put whether it's a conservatorship, guardianship, if it's a trust, if you're an attorney, in fact, reporting to the court, you would list that in the case number. Other peripheral items in the form is in the lower left. You'll see here it says GC 400 sum. And then the approved date, it says for mandatory use approved by the Judicial Council, which is the agency just below the California Supreme Court. So they're telling everyone when you're in probate court, you must use this form. For probates, for guardianships, conservatorships, and if you have a trust accounting before the court, this form must be used. Then I mentioned page 21 that we're on. In the lower right, there's a footnote to code sections. And these are code sections if you want more information about what do they mean by this, why am I doing this. There's probate code sections 1060 and beyond, and then California Rules of Court. All these forms are available online, and they're online by form number. The Riverside Superior Court has a link where you can get all of them into one continuous PDF, and the forms are fillable. So they often refer to this as the summary of account for standard and simplified accounts. We're not going to talk about simplified accounts. Just define it for you. If you have a conservatorship and there's like 4 transactions during the year, they allow you to do a simplified account that looks pretty much like a check register. We're not going to go over that today. We're going to do the standard account. And you put which account you are doing. So if you just got appointed as a executor, administrator in a probate, or a guardianship, guardian, or a conservator, this is your first account. The time frame is 90 days after your appointment. You're going to have to turn in the inventory and appraisal that Tamara went over with you. And then at the end of the first year, you have to do and turn in an account for that year from the opening date or the date of your appointment or the date you received letters until 1 year from that point, and you list them in order. The future accountings are done on odd years. So you do your accounting at the end of the first year, third year, fifth year, so on, 7th year, 9th year. And then check if it's a final account, which we get frequently in probate, or if it's an interim account. So that's heading information. The form is designed so that positive numbers are on the top and negative numbers are pretty much on the bottom. They use a term called charges, and that means all the money that you're responsible for, from the money when you started plus all the money that came in. And they use the term credits to mean all the money that went out during the account, and then your ending balances. So you can look at charges of responsibility or burden. And if any of the money is unaccounted for or disappears, you end up being personally liable for those funds. So we start out lines 1A. This is a copy from the inventory and appraisal. What is your cash balance on that date? And what are the non-cash values of the assets that you received from the probate referee? And the term carry value is used here during the entire accounting process. If you know tax, which I've been doing tax for 50 years now. If you know tax, they call that basis. And it's similar, but basis is what you bought something for and maybe improved it into. But carry value is just the appraised value when you were appointed, or the value it was when you acquired a property. And that carry value never changes during the whole time period you're doing accounting. So the first three lines are basically a copy job from your inventory and appraisal. And then we're going to get into all the other income items, lines 2 through 6. And these are summary numbers. If you think of computer links, this would be line A might be a link to 8 different schedules, and the total being the 43,000. And the same thing with the disbursements. We end up with the total assets, beginning assets plus everything that came in, and then we have the total of all assets that during the account period. And now we start getting into the disbursements, or they call them credits. It's kind of opposite to what you would think. You know, we use credit cards and that's a liability, and these words are completely different, a little bit arcane compared to accounting terminology. Then at the end of the account period, the date shown above, what are the reconciled balance of the cash accounts, non-cash accounts, and total property at the end of the account period. And then you have the total credits. You have to have line 7 match line 14, or your accounting's not going to get approved. And unfortunately, for court accounting, you have to account for every penny. In income tax, we can round everything off to the nearest dollar. It makes it a little bit easier, but you cannot do that in court accounting. So now we're going to go into some of the detailed schedules that make up this GC 400 sum. I know it sounds kind of weird calling this thing a GC 400 sum. You can call it a summary of account. It's just what the court decided to call things. Our first form is copying from your inventory and appraisal the cash on hand at the beginning of the account period. And on this form, it says that judicial council has approved this form for optional use. And this is where I was talking about you can use a spreadsheet or some other software if you choose. So the cash is copied from your inventory and appraisal. Now we have the non-cash. This again is copied from your inventory and appraisal. And you list it under the carry value because that's what the probate referee said the asset was worth. And on your first accounting, you leave this column blank, estimated market value, because the carry value and the market value are the same, so you don't need market. When you're doing your second or third, fifth accounting, you just get the values for your estimated values and post them there. The cash value of the stockbroker account at the end of the account period. And for real property, we might use Zillow values. And you're not held accountable for these estimates. They're only estimated values at best. And so what we've just done, I'm going to go back and We just talked about the two schedules on the summary of account that make up line 1A and 1B for the accounting reports. On page 22, lower left page number, this is an optional form that can be used. It's sometimes nice to use. There may be 4 different dividend schedules. There may be 5 different rent schedules. This is a summary form before you bring it to the GC 400 sum. Now we're getting into the detailed income schedules. In this case, we have receipts of dividends. And so you would put like Charles Schwab investment account, and then each and every dividend you will list what the dividend is. You cannot total anything in court accounting. Everything has to be item by item. And just some side reference material. If you have a real small estate, say a conservatorship, and the person has 15 to 50,000 or whatever, you can petition the court under probate code section 2628 to dispense with the accounting because there's so few transactions and hardly any money. And that will relieve some of your paperwork. Another problem that I've come across is husband and wife have been married for their whole 40 years. All their assets are community property. And then one of them, let's say the husband, gets put in a conservatorship. And then they say that you need to do a court accounting. That's not true because both spouses have unlimited right to manage the assets. So you can get out of doing the accounting by petitioning the court for community property assets under probate code section 3051 and 3054. And that can save a lot of effort for a spouse who is a guardian or conservator, be a conservator in this case. So we talked about dividend income. Now we have interest income, listing in the name of the bank, and as Tamara mentioned, put the last 4 digits of the account number. On page 24. Now we have receipts from pensions. Just list the net amount that comes in after withholdings. Another thing I point out just for reference, when you're getting your inventory and appraisal, there is a probate referee handout. If I can't get it to show, but it's called a probate referee guide, and you can get it online. The idea there is you want to see how the probate referee is supposed to value assets, like the example of a diamond ring. Is it really a diamond? Is it cubic zirconium? Who knows? What we do is if it's valuable jewelry, we have a company in Pleasant Hill that's a state consignment, and they have jewelers on site and they can give valuations. Okay, now we have rents. The rents just list by property. If you have several, show the rental income that comes in. Another thing I wanted to point out back on the dividends, if you have a large stock portfolio and they keep reinvesting the dividends, it creates a lot of accounting work because every dividend, you have to show the income, and then they're buying more stock. So then you have to go over and report that you bought 0.00347 shares of Apple stock. And so you have 2 transactions for every dividend. In a large portfolio, it can be a whole lot of unnecessary work. So the dividend reinvestment program, we abbreviated DRIP, suggest you talk to the stockbroker and have that stopped. So as the dividends come in, they're kept in cash until the cash balance gets large enough, and then you, as the fiduciary, um, should reinvest it as part of the portfolio. We're only going to be covering a few of the more common judicial counsel forms to do a fiduciary court accounting. I point out that there are 48 different types and forms and schedules, so they're all available online, but there's a whole lot more that are less common, and we're not going to be explaining those. The next form is Social Security. In this form, you just list the net amount of what you received. The 1099 SSA that's going to come at the end of the year is going to show a higher number because there's withholdings that happen, but you're not accounting for the withholdings like for Medicare Part B, so you do not have to account for them. All the probate referees in our county have to take this accounting class, and we had one probate examiner come in and take the class, and she noted right off that this is unacceptable. This is a date range that for that quarter, that's the amount of Social Security. And you cannot do that. You cannot combine payments. Every payment has to show as income. Okay, the next item is receipts other. Call this miscellaneous receipts. You can use this for random items that don't have another schedule: tax refund, insurance reimbursement, various other reimbursement items. The next income schedule is the GC 400 sum Schedule B, and this is for gains on sale of assets. So in this form, we have a sale of a residence. Carry value from the probate referee is $230,000. The fiduciary sold it for $250,000, so they're claiming that the gain is $19,000, and that's based on the gross sales price. And for court accounting, that's the income. For me, in doing tax, that's not the gain, because you have a myriad of different closing costs, but you cannot mix them here. The closing costs, because we're on income. We're going to cover that later in the material on how to deal with the real estate commission and other real property sales costs. We have the next on Schedule C, long-term care, listing the convalescent hospital, how much is being paid per month. Now, we're at the end of the, actually I skipped over here. This was the gains and the income. That's the end of the income schedules that we're covering, and we're on page 29. And so when we're done with all the income, we're going to go back to our summary page on page 21 and list all the details of all the receipts from your Schedule A items. We're going to release all the gains showing for the capital gains and items here. And then we'll get the total of the assets during the account period. there's another line item. If in the assets you have a going trade or business, the fiduciary accounting is not the place to put all the income and expenses for the business. You would contact the CPA for that business enterprise and just bring in the net income, which is nice because it saves you a lot of work. So now we're going to go to the expense items. On the disbursements, starting at GC 400C, and that's in your materials on page 30. Now we're getting into the disbursements of residential care. On the Schedule C, general and administrative, you might have bank costs, probate referee fees, perhaps doctor fees, reimbursements for court filing costs. We have disbursements for living expense. Just list the variety of items: cable, television, water, garbage, Pacific Gas and Electric costs. Then disbursements broken out for medical, and disbursements in this case for the house sale that we covered previously. So we're listing those all as disbursements. We have an escrow fee, termite, real estate broker commission, and then we paid off the house loan. And that's where all the outbound minus numbers or disbursements are indicated. It's kind of ironic, but on a real estate sales escrow, one item that never shows is the net cash to the conservatee or to the probate or to the trust. All the detail numbers are shown, but the net cash that gets written by the title company does not show. We have another disbursement for property sales. In this case, we had a consignment fee for furniture that was sold. And then we have disbursements for rental property. In this case, we would list them by rental property and each of the expenses for the rental. We saw one time where there were 4 or 5 different rentals, and the person doing the accounting put them all in a spreadsheet to look like a tax return, Schedule E, where they had the income for each rental and the expenses for each rental. And the court kicked it out immediately, saying, no, that's not the right format, and you can't do that. So you have to use this kind of arcane way to report rental expenses. So then we get to Schedule C, expenses other. We have, in this case, tax repair fee and miscellaneous income tax fee. And this is losses on sale. In tax, we'd call that capital losses. But we have an old car that had a $3,100 value. It was sold at $3,000. So we ended up taking a loss of $125,000 for the books. And so at this point, we've reported all of the disbursements that came out of the conservators or the probate's accounts. And so then we go back to the GC 400 sum on page 21 in your material, and we list all the disbursements. So we're almost done with this GC 400 sum summary sheet because we've got the beginning, money coming in, money going out, and now we have to get to showing the assets at the end of the account period. And this is identical to your inventory and appraisal, except for this is at the end of the account period. So you list all the reconciled cash balances and then the carry value of all the non-cash assets. So we got the family residence, we had carry value of 950,000, estimated market value from Zillow, Reddit, or Realtor.com of 1.1 million estimated. So that's the ending assets on account, or you can call it ending inventory and appraisal. And at that point, we bring those totals forward here to lines 13A and 13B on the GC 400 sum on page 21 of your material. And then at that point, you cross your fingers and you hope your numbers balance. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. If they don't, you have to take a lot of time and figure out where the problem was. One thing I recommend, I take an adding machine tape and recheck my tape every time I run total numbers so that I have less chance. If you're doing electronically, oftentimes the desktop computer schedules calculator will show the details of your entries. So verify all your entries for each of your totals. If you're doing reporting on investments and you have capital gain distributions, you should be aware that those go on acquired property because a capital gain distribution is not income, it's principal or corpus, so it has to be treated, shown separately in your accounting. Some of the common mistakes in doing court accounting is your GC 400 form does not balance. Expense items are not clearly labeled. If an item looks like it might be a personal expense, give more detail. Like say you bought 21 pairs of bed sheets. Well, you could put in there because the ward is incontinent. Or put in a hot tub and it was not for the benefit of the guardian. You could put in there that the ward has required medical treatment in a hot tub. So make it clear to the reader. Other problems in accounting: to account for things that the fiduciary has no responsibility for. For example, if you have a rental property out of the state of California, you don't account for it on your California accounting. Problem showing income from assets that are not in your inventory and appraisal. Another error is if you have a house that's worth $2 million and it has a $1 million loan on it, you show it at the 2 million, you don't net it. It's not the net equity value of the 1 million. Another accounting problem is when the fiduciary writes a check to themselves for income or reimbursed expenses. You should wait and have the judge approve any income to the fiduciary or to the attorney. You need judge approval. Let's see, some of the other problems. You have to have reasonable fonts, 12 size font. You cannot have use color paper dividers. It all has to be on just white printer paper. And then if you want additional information, I don't know if I could show it well, but there's a book called Fiduciary Accounting Handbook, and it's put out by CEB, Continuing Education of the Bar in Berkeley. And the book's about an inch and a quarter thick. If you need something to help you go to sleep, you could read it. But the purpose of it is not to learn accounting. The purpose of the book is when you have something you want to reference, you want to look up a unique item, like when do I break out principal and interest, uh, and how do I show it? So it's a great reference book. It's fairly expensive. It's about $300. Um, but it is, if you're doing unique types of accounting, that's can be helpful. Let's see. Another schedule you should be aware of is a GC 400 Schedule F. It's called Change in Form of Assets. And you would use that, let's say if you took money out of a Wells Fargo account and transferred it into a new account in Bank of America. Well, it's kind of a change in form. You would show that there. If you received a stock dividend, where instead of paying cash on the security, they gave you additional stock, you would use the Schedule F. Other items, if you want a beautiful diploma for graduating this class, contact our office and we'll give you a completion certificate for the court accounting workshop. I went through this fairly quickly. I want to open it up to see if there's any questions, assuming anybody's awake. You can, does anyone have any questions on the schedules that I had gone over? Well, that's great. Then in that case, I'm going to turn control over to the host for the meeting, back to Tamara, and then she will continue on with the court petition and other items up to the conclusion of today's meeting. This is the end of my part, and Tamara will take it from here.
Thank you.
Okay, you're on, Tamara.
Thank you. Let me switch over. I don't have control yet.
Okay. It'll take a while for the computers to catch up.
Yen has a question. Go ahead, honey, while we're switching computers.
Yeah, do we do the accounting by month or by year?
You do the accounting by the time period you need. So if it's a probate case, it's depending on your when you were first appointed, and then when you're asking for a distribution, that could be a year, it could be a year and a half, it could be 2 years, it could be longer. If it's a conservatorship, hun, your accounting has to be due the first year, and then it's due every 2 years after that. So depending on what you're doing there. If it's a trust administration, it depends on what the trust says that you need to, how soon you need to prepare it.
Okay.
Just a comment, Tamara, you might go to 125% on your PDFs.
Are we back? Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
I don't have the share option. You haven't transferred it.
Okay, I transferred to host, so you should have it. If not, tell me what I can do to help.
Go back to the three dots next to my name and say make host again.
I don't get a choice to transfer control to you again.
Okay. It just came through.
There we see it.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm back, and this part of the course actually is going to be what would you do after your accounting is done, and how do you submit it to the court? Because I will tell you, you cannot just drop off your accounting to the court and say, hey, I'm done, I want to file it. That's not how things work. Keep in mind, if you're doing a probate, this is not the form you will be using because it will have a different title. It will typically say final distribution. It'll have different wording on it, and you will put different information within the body. This is going to be only an example that you would use for conservatorships or guardianships. This is also not for a trust. When you're doing a trust administration or an accounting for the trust, you do not need this petition because it's not a court, it's not court monitored. If it is court monitored, and the only reason that would be is say you have a trust and you have a trust and it's contested, then what you would do is again a different petition. Hold on. So we're gonna go through again. This pertains only to conservatorships or guardianships. This is on what they call pleading paper, meaning it's numbered along the side. If you don't have pleading paper, you can look up online and just search in pleading paper, and you will get Word version. You will get all kinds of ways to do this. Up top, this is just the heading. This would follow the same thing as the inventory and appraisals. So if this is an attorney that's doing it, they will put their heading here. If you're a pro per or handling the case on your own, you would put your name and address and information up here. Attorney for, again, this follows the form. If you're doing it yourself, you would put attorney for your name, conservator pro per or pro se, meaning you're self-represented. You don't have an attorney. You would want to put down here the county the case is being heard in. In this case, the heading would be conservatorship of the person and estate. You could be the conservator of just the estate. You could be the guardian of just an estate. You would not be completing this form or an accounting if you were just a conservator of a person or a guardian of a person. This would only be done for if it says of the estate. The difference being estate means you're handling money, and of the person means making medical decisions and other things, so you would not need to account for money. Okay, so you would put in the conservatee's name here, the case number, and you are going to indicate whether this is your first accounting, second accounting, third accounting, fourth accounting, so on and so forth. It's a report of you, the conservator. It's a petition for settlement. Now, I'm going to state in your example, this is the header for what we're teaching. Your header may be completely different than this, in that if you're not seeking approval of a sale of any property, you don't need this information here. If you're not, if it's no sale, then leave this out. This is the only time a conservator can pay themselves. They need to seek court approval. You can never, as a conservator, pay yourself. Very, very, very important. Even if you feel I've done this conservatorship for a long time, I'm not getting paid. There's nothing you can do about payment to yourself until you get court approval. Also, your expenses. There may be times during the conservatorship that say you're out with a conservatee and the conservatee says, hey, can we stop at Costco? I want to get some vitamins and snacks. I don't know. And you only have your ATM card, debit card, credit card, whatever you want to use. And so you purchase it for the conservatee, but you want to get reimbursed later, or you should be reimbursed later. You would need to ask for it right here. So in addition to asking for conservator fees and attorney fees, you would also ask for reimbursement of advanced expenses. Again, you wouldn't use the word attorney compensation in here if you're doing this on your own and no attorney is involved. But if there is an attorney involved, they know they cannot collect any fees from the conservatorship until they get court approval. Now, that doesn't mean, say, for instance, an attorney will try a little sneaky way and say, fine, you're going to have to advance me a certain dollar amount for me to take the case, and you front your own money to pay the attorney. Then here is where you would ask to be reimbursed for those fees. So this header here has to do with only what is involved in your case. Use it as a guideline, but yours might not look exactly like this. And we'll go through what changes within the petition. Okay, down here you will indicate the date of the hearing, but you will not have a date. The minute you submit this petition with the accounting attached to it, the court is going to give you a hearing date. Now, so many people come to me and they go, Tim, well, the court ordered I had to have the accounting done, and I have a hearing on October 1st of 2020, November 1st, 2026. I go, okay, that's fine and good, but the minute you submit this petition with your accounting and you turn it in, you will get a new hearing date, and likely the court will cancel that other hearing date they've already given you for October 1st. So do not put October 1st, 2026, because even when you turn this in, the court's going to cross that out and they're going to give you a new hearing date. They must allow enough time for the examiners to review this, for all parties you're noticing to review this. If there's anybody can object to this, that's a beneficiary who has standing. So enough time has to be given for that notice. And that's why every time you submit it, they will give you a hearing date. So leave this information blank. Time, you will indicate the wording here, but you will not put a time in. Again, court clerk who is accepting this petition at the window will give you the time of the hearing. You will know the department because your department doesn't change unless you get an official notice from the court stating we've rearranged courtrooms or whatever, and now you are in Department A instead of Department 22. And then if that's the case, you will indicate your new department. Judicial officer, I never put this line item in. Very frequently, that the judge who is assigned to your case may not be able to hear the petition on your date of hearing. What does that mean? That means that the judge might be called off to a different courtroom because another courtroom that has a trial going or something, the judge got sick or there was an emergency, they're called off to some other courtroom. If that's the case, a pro tem will sit in. So the person hearing your petition might not be the judge originally signed to you. Say the judge is on vacation, the judge can be out sick, the judge could have a medical appointment, whatever the reason being, that judge might not be the judge that hears your case that day. So I do not ever indicate judicial officer. I don't even add that in. Rex, your speaker is still on. So I'm going to start now down here, and this is how you're going to start it. You're going to say petitioner, which would be you. You are the petitioner. When you put it in quotes like this, hereinafter conservator, all that means is if I just refer to myself, being you, as the conservator, I am meaning that means me. So, as the conservator of the state and person of Jeannie, I am presenting. What am I presenting? I'm just going to copy everything I have here, right down here, and state I'm presenting for settlement and allowance, his or her verified first account, and I'm going to repeat all of this. Petitioner, being you, respectfully states these following facts. Remember, when you turn in documents to the court, they must stand on their own. That's a very, very important thing to know. What does standing on their own mean? That means that anybody, including me, including Rex, including anybody else, can pick up this piece of paper or this petition and know everything I need to know about the case. There is no such thing as when we get to appointment, you say, well, Your Honor, you know when I was appointed already, you have the whole case in front of you. That's not appropriate. No, it's not up to the judge to be going through his 500-page file to see when you were appointed and all this and that. Your papers must stand on your own. I must be able to see when you were appointed. Then I'm going to look, okay, this date matches that inventory and appraisal date. This date matches the date you're showing as your first accounting starting, and so on and so forth. The only thing is, in our example, you will see that the person was appointed on March 8th, but they did not receive letters until the 14th. So in this case, and I cannot help that this was part of the conservator handbook, but the actual inventory and appraisal should not have started until March 14th, the day of issued letters, because you cannot take control of a bank account or any assets until you are issued letters. So the court may have appointed me on March 8th in a hearing that we had, but the court said, I want a bond. And it took me 6 days, because maybe this was a Friday. It took me 6 days to get a bond secured. And so I didn't get letters issued till March 14th. So March 14th is the day that I would have put on my inventory and appraisal, and it's the date I would have started my accounting. So I apologize for the confusion in the printed material, but we took it from the handbook, and so we're teaching, and I just need to tell you those things. So at all times since the appointment, David, being the conservator, has been acting as the conservator. 2, the inventory and appraisal. Remember those words? We just went through it, right? The inventory and appraisal was filed on what date? Showing a value of this. This automatically tells the probate examiners. It automatically tells the judge, I'm going to go straight to the accounting, and I better see your beginning assets total this number. If they don't, I'm stopping right then and there and saying your accounting's wrong. It's very simple. They match things and they know how to look for this. So you want to make sure your writing is the same as what you're seeing. Okay, going down, I'm then going to state what the period of the account is. So in this case, which is inaccurate, but we're going to just go with it, March 8th through March 7th. Now, I myself, when I prepare accountings for many law firms and preppers and other people, I don't end it like this. I myself instead will end it on the basically the bank statements ending page. Now, keep in mind, people are going to ask, well, what if I have 5 bank accounts and they all end at a different time? Could happen. I myself would then go to the bank as the conservator and say, hey, just for ease of me, my accounting purposes, things like that, can you do me a favor and change my ending period if that's easier for you? Or I will take at least one bank account that technically has the most money in it, and I will say, okay, it ends on August 31st. So I would, or let's say March, I don't even know if March has 30 or 31, and I would continue this to March 31 of 2013. And so my next accounting will start April, and I will continue to run April 1 through March 31 of either 2 years or whatever time period I need to run it. Because it's so much easier to figure out the balance in the account with the bank statements when you're ending at a bank statement period, as opposed to figuring out what the ending balance is on this specific date if it's the middle of your bank statement period. So if it's the middle of your bank statement period, you have to start with the bank statement that is included. So you take, what did the bank statement start with? You add all your deposits up to March 7th. You take out, and then you subtract out all your expenses up to March 7th. And then you come up with what is the balance. That's really difficult because things change, twist, turn. There was a check that cashed on March 7th. Do I include that? Do I not include it? How do I end this? It just becomes rather difficult. So I end them at the end of a month. Again, you're not strictly on this specific ending in 1 year period. You can end it on the 31st or end of account period, that's perfectly fine. But it must match your accounting. So charges and credits, you'll realize charges and credits come from the actual accounting, the summary cover page, the GC 400 sum. This is where it's coming from. So you could just duplicate all this wording. Investment accounts. Now, there will be some categories within this petition that you may not need to include in your petition. First one being investment accounts. If you do not have investment accounts, you only have cash or you only have one real property, you would not put anything about investment accounts because you have no money in an investment account. Otherwise, it's very important if you are a conservator or a guardian that the bank accounts are interest-bearing accounts. People come to me and say, Tam, but this account is the same account the conservatee has used for years prior to me becoming the conservator, and she never had it in an interest-bearing account. Well, guess what happens? Court's going to come back to you, and they could, I'm not saying they will, I'm saying they could surcharge you for interest because you did not put as part of your duties, although you signed conservator duties, which stated you would invest and manage the money in interest-bearing accounts, and you are losing the beneficiaries and the conservatee money by not making sure that it is an investment account. Now, some people have even said, well, shoot, I only have, let's say, $5,000 in the account that won't even earn interest. In some cases, you might get a penny every 3 months, but you can at least stay under penalty of perjury that you had the accounts in interest-bearing accounts. Again, very important. If you have to change accounts, if you have to change banks, if you have to do what you have to do, make sure the money is in interest-bearing accounts. I have seen cases before where the conservator did not have the money in the interest-bearing account, and the children of that conservatee sued the conservator for not getting interest on the account, and the conservator was personally liable, which means you have to take the money out of your own pocket and pay the court the interest the account should have earned during the time period that you had control. You don't ever want to do that. Why do you want to give your money? Why? So please make sure you have an interest-bearing account. So that's what you're stating here. If you have cash or a checking, a savings, something like that. Statement of liabilities. This really would be only if most of the time you're going to state there are no liabilities. This would be a place if you know that prior to you being appointed the conservator, that the conservatee had a I just lost my thought. When they do a reverse mortgage, if you know there's a reverse mortgage on the real property, you might want to state that here. If you know that there has been any judgments filed against the estate, you would state that here. If you want to, anything you would need to indicate that there's a liability owed to somebody else. Maybe you advance the conservative funds, anything of that nature. You would just want to make sure that you tell the court there is an outstanding loan to somebody due, and you would indicate the name of that somebody and the amount of the loan. Sale of an automobile. This is an optional option. It's one of the only few that are optional. Now, I've taught this class, Rex said 6 or 7, we're on almost 9 years, but and many times people come back and say, oh, my accounting was rejected. I look at it and I'm thinking, why? And I look, when I say it's optional, when I looked at their petition, they had 2 things in it. They dated their appointment, their inventory, and that's all they said. And then they're like, this is the end. And I'm like, oh no, honey. When I say some are optional, I'm only meaning a couple. This is one of the optional items. If you did not sell an automobile during the account period, your petition would not state on it, I sold an automobile, right? It's obvious. So in this case, though, the example, the conservator did sell an automobile, and so they're just saying to the court, I'm so sorry, my nose is, I think allergies. They do want to state the court, I sold the vehicle, I sold it for a loss because maybe it was in a garage and it was so dusty and dirty. The battery was dead. You don't even know if it starts. I mean, it could be the engine was blown many years ago. There could be a whole bunch of information. But again, remember, it really wouldn't have been a loss if you properly told the probate referee that the vehicle was not functioning, not working, had dead battery, has been in the garage 20 years, hasn't moved, tires are gone, maybe little pesky mice got in, stuff like that. The probate referee is going to value it based on that, and you wouldn't have the loss. You just don't want the probate referee to say there's an old Cadillac and the probate referee gives it a 10 grand value, and then you turn around and sell it for $500. That you'll get you in a little bit of trouble. Somebody's going to ask you why, if you could imagine so, right? And then you would have to explain why. But that's what this section is. So if you don't sell an automobile during the account period, don't put this in, please. Skip it. Your number 8 might be this one or might not. Here is another one, sale of furniture. The only reason why there was sale of furniture is because they sold the vacation home, not the principal residence of the conservatee. So selling a vacation home is completely different than selling the conservatee's real primary residence. Remember, if your conservatee needs to go into a home for their care because their medical history and stuff is beyond, or their condition is beyond the care you can give, or putting them into a facility allows them to have more people around, to feel more comfortable. They need 24/7 care anyway, something like that. Before you even think you're going to sell the conservatee's home, you must get court approval. You're never allowed to do that. So in this sample, recognize it's only the sale of the beach home, which is the vacation home. This was not the sale of the primary residence. Be very careful before you try to sell the conservator's primary residence, you get court approval. Now, some people also then ask, well, then why do I even want to sell it? Maybe I'll just keep it forever, and then once she passes, we'll go on with that. Realize that your job as a conservator is to manage the assets frugally. And what that means is you are not managing the assets frugally if what you're doing is leaving that house empty and you know the conservatee is in a home and will not be returning to that home. Um, so what you could do in that instance, there's a couple different things. You could do a lease rent agreement and rent out the property. If it's going to be a child of the conservatee, make sure that that child pays fair market value for the rent. They don't get a discount just because that was mom's home. Or maybe the child was living with the conservatee before the conservatee went into a facility. Then it's up to you as the conservator to figure out and give time for that person, but not a long time, to gather their senses and figure out where else they can go and live and pay rent and things of that nature, because you're in charge of making sure that conservatees assets are being managed. The other thing would be, maybe you don't know if the conservatee is going to come back home. You think it's 3 months, and then the doctors say, no, we'd like them to stay a little longer. If it was a short time period, you don't need to go rent a house for 2 months or whatever, because goodness, nobody's going to sign that type of agreement. But instead, what it is, your responsibility is to make sure you get cameras in the home, the house is secured, you check on it frequently to make sure there's no squatters that get in there. You are really responsible for that house. If there is a break in of that house and you don't have cameras and you don't know about it for years later because you don't check on the home and things like that, you're going to have some explaining to do to that court, and it's not going to be a good explanation. That's a situation that you hope you're never in. Make sure you go, whether it's Costco or you order online or you use some of your spare ones, that you put either a ring camera or some type of security cameras in there so you can be alerted if there is something that happens in that house and you need to know about it immediately. The other thing is, sometimes a conservator will say, I have a little extra time, so I'm giving you a little bit more information than what we usually do. But sometimes, as the conservator, you figure out, well, the conservatee, yes, the conservatee does not have many assets. So, say the conservatee is somewhat low on cash, and everybody, or should know if you don't know, how extremely expensive it is to put somebody in a care facility. I can tell you they run between 10 and I've seen up to $20,000 a month for care homes. Say your conservatee only receives Social Security and maybe a tiny pension. You might have to go apply for Medicare Medi-Cal. They do not count the primary residence as an asset to qualify for Medicare Medi-Cal. So you might have to ask for that. Be careful then and consult an attorney, because this gets ugly. If you were to sell the conservatee's house, you've now changed it to cash. And if you don't handle that cash properly, which means usually putting it into a trust of some kind, then they get disqualified from Medicare Medi-Cal. You never want to disqualify them from Medicare Medi-Cal if they are approved. That would be a complete disaster for you. So please make sure you work with an attorney to tell them that is your situation. You do not want them to get disqualified from Medicare Medi-Cal, and therefore, please help me to what I would do with the sale of these assets and things like that. So learn your rules when you need an attorney, even though you don't believe you can afford an attorney. There are certain situations during your conservatorship that you may not have a choice but to consult an attorney, and that it could be like it'll save you so much headache and so much worry, and there's so many things it'll save you. So please, please, please seek counsel if things like that should happen. So we're going to go back again. If you did not sell any furniture, please don't include this, son. It's only because we did sell the furniture that we're notating that. Now, in this case, there was also the sale of property, which again was the vacation home. You're going to want to indicate, I've got to sneeze and I just can't. You're going to want to indicate that the sale was either a gain or a loss, and you've included it on your schedules. And that it was based on court confirmation proper, because even though it was vacation home, they did present it to the court and had the court confirm the sale just to protect themselves, I'm sure. So you've indicated that here. Again, if during your accounting you do not sell any property, then this would not be on here. We are down to number 10. You must talk about the bond every time you submit your petition. In this case, because the bond was a small dollar amount and they sold the vacation home and turned that now into cash, which, remember when I showed you the example of the inventory and appraisal, when I ask you if there's a $20,000 bond, but you have $57,000 in cash, was your bond sufficient or insufficient? In that case, it was insufficient because the bond did not cover the cash. In this case, because they sold the vacation home, they now have more cash and their bond does not cover it. So prior to the court instructing you to get another additional bond or increase the bond, this person went ahead before the court ordered it and said, I know I need a higher bond because now I have cash. They go back to the bond company and they say, I need to have a higher bond because I sold the vacation home. Now, instead of $50,000 in cash, I have 183. I want to make sure my bond covers all my cash. And so they went out, purchased an additional or increased the bond, paid the fees, and they filed that with the bond, new bond now with the court. So the court knows now all cash is covered via the bond. And I'm going to repeat, what is the purpose of the bond? Because many people ask. What this bond really does and means is whoever is giving you this bond I specifically use Phillips bonding. I love them. And what they do is they tell the court, okay, I guarantee up to $184,000 for this conservator, that if they should, God forbid, steal all of this money. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean steal. Say you improperly say, I'm going to invest in this new startup bakery. And so I'm going to give all the conservatives cash because they're going to make millions of dollars after owning this bakery and blah, blah, blah. And the bakery fails. You're in big trouble there. Then you've lost $184,000. What will the court do? The court will contact, if it's through Phillips Bonding Company, will contact Phillips Bonding Company and go, yoo-hoo, hello. We want you now to give us $184,000, replace the cash that's gone. And then the bond company then has to go after you personally to return that $184,000. They are like, what is that old show with that Bond guy? God, I can't think of it. The Bounty Hunter, or I'm sorry, I don't, whatever his name was. But anyway, think of that, where he went after people who mostly failed on their bond, or they didn't show up for court and they gave them a bond, or whatever the reason was. But in this case, the bond company would go after you to replace the amount of money that they turned over to the court for you. So again, the reason why the bond should cover the cash is if you took all this cash, the bonding company has plenty of bond to replace it. And that's what the guarantee is that the court wants, is they can have the cash replaced if it ends up. And believe it or not, I see some cases where people don't know where the cash went. How? I have no idea, but they just have no clue where it went. So we have to go to the bond company to get it replaced. So that's the purpose of a bond and why it's so important. And there will be some information here. This is a good stopping point, or not stopping, but is there any questions? Because I went through a lot of information. Y'all are so quiet. No questions? Wow. Nobody? Y'all are too easy on me today. Good job. Okay, let's keep going then. So now we get to a very, very important answer here, or I'm sorry, something that you will put in the petition is no affiliate relationships. What does that exactly mean? And you need to think about this. So during the account period, you as the conservator did not hire anybody and pay them who was a family member or had some type of relationship with a conservator. Now, what exactly does that mean? And can I do it even though the states otherwise? Let me tell you what that means. What that means, it can mean many things. So, but here is what the court is looking for when they ask you this question, and or what you are stating when you answer this question to the court. So I'm going to do a couple different examples. So you have a conservatorship account. The conservatee has a house that's in a homeowners association, and it is a requirement of the homeowners association that the lawn is mowed weekly. I'm coming up with my own story, so I'm not using somebody else's. But So the lawn has to be mowed weekly. And I currently, as the conservator, pay the landscaper $50 every time they come. I know it's a whole lot more than that, but let's just say $50 every time they come. And he's been doing it for years and years. No big deal. Great. But he tells me, hey, by the way, next month I'm going on vacation for a month. So I just want to let you know I don't have anybody to fill in for me. So you will have to find another landscaper. All right, gotcha. So it just so happens my son is home from college. You're going to see where we're going here. My son's home from college and he's not working. And I say, hey, son, I need you to do me a favor. For 4 weeks during this month, I need you once a week to go over and mow this person's lawn. And I know you're in college. I know you need money for expenses. This is a great opportunity for you, and I'll even, let's say, give you $75 an hour. I mean, every time you go, so that you can pay for school books or gas, food, whatever you need to pay for during once you start back in college. Can you see where things went right or where it went wrong? And I'm going to ask for participation because I still have time. Somebody's got to answer me. Come on, no answer is wrong. Don't worry about however you say that. I want you to speak though, not put it in comments. Nobody wants to talk with me?
You can't hire your own son.
Okay, Katie, you're kind of right and you're kind of wrong. Okay, it's kind of a trick question. Let me say it to you this way. I am allowed to hire my son, right?
You
And
just
if
can't
I
overpay him, right?
Absolutely, that's the right answer. If I was only paying the regular gardener $50 every time he came, I cannot offer my son $75 because it's not my money. I don't have a right to say, yeah, I'll give you more money if you do me this favor. Like, who am I? Now, if I wanted to, I could say, I'll give you $50 from the conservatees funds and I'll chip in an extra 25 on my own money. Hey, nothing wrong with that. The problem is I cannot hire my family member to receive any amount more than what is a regular everyday person, even if it was a maintenance man and my maintenance guy could not come and I had to hire somebody else. If they were more expensive, that is okay. One, they're not a family member, but two, I will explain that my regular maintenance guy was unavailable. This guy's more expensive, whatever. That's a different situation. It's when you're enhancing your family member using somebody else's money. You need, and yes, you're right, that you need to pay the going rate. So you might have to shop around several landscapers and then figure out a rate, but you get the point. Now I'm going to switch gears and give another example. So say, for instance, you're selling the vacation home and it doesn't matter if I say wife or husband or what it is, but that wife, husband, daughter, sister, aunt, uncle, whatever, is a licensed real estate a realtor. Can I hire them to sell the property? It's a question.
Answer. It's a conflict of interest.
Now, in some cases, you are correct, but no, it's really not. Here's the thing.
Okay.
As long as you state that you're in here, your wife is a licensed realtor, and the commission you are paying is no different than any other licensed realtor, there is no reason why you cannot use your wife. Yes, you can. You're not paying them any different. They're not going to undercut a deal because with a friend, because they're not going to get commission from that. And even if they did that, that would be on you. When you look at the offer, you go, hey, I don't like this offer. It looks a little low. Then you can say, I'm not signing this offer. You control everything, even though your wife is the realtor. Again, there's nothing wrong with
Well, you wouldn't
hiring.
believe Michael stole his house. It's
I'm
just
sorry?
really something.
Rex, you're on speaker still. We've heard you the whole time again. So, anyway, going back, you absolutely can hire your wife or husband to sell the property as long as one, you indicate your wife sold the property, and two, they did not sell it for any rate or their commission was not higher than you would have paid anybody else. Do you all understand where we're going with this? You must indicate you paid your son, your wife, your husband, your spouse, whoever, a family member. You must indicate you hired them, but then you want to follow that with, I did not pay them more than I would pay anybody else. You're perfectly fine with doing that. Exactly. Fair, equitable rates. As long as your husband, your spouse, your son, your daughter, whatever, will only charge you to do what anybody else would charge you to do, you're okay to pay them as opposed to somebody else. But you better make sure that somehow in your papers you have copies of you inquired with a different landscaper and they wanted 85. You inquired with a different realtor and they said, oh, I'll do it for 5%. And then you have to tell your wife, you're charging 6. I would have to go to the realtor who's only charging 5. If you want to bring your rates down to 5, I'll use you instead. You can do negotiations like that, but make sure you've documented, you have it if the court asks you. You do not turn this in with your paperwork, but if the court asks you, you need to be able to answer, and you want to be able to answer honestly, and you're going to, if it's a question that the court asks you through examiner notes, tentative rulings, whatever they want to call them, you'll be able to say, I got quotes from ABC Financing. I got quotes from Remax. I got quotes from all these quotes, and they were also 6%, or they were 5%, or they were 5.5%. And that's the exact rate that I'm paying my significant other, my family member, whatever. So you're fully disclosing, yes, I did use a family member, or most of the time you don't use a family member because there was nothing you needed them for. But as long as you state you did it and they had the same rate, that's up to you. That could cause a beneficiary to go, well, I'm a landscaper too, and I would have done it for free, but they didn't even ask me to do it. So all the money that they paid for their son to do the landscaping should be put back in the conservatorships money or conservatees money because they didn't ask me and I would have done it for free. That does not mean that you need to run around to every beneficiary if you don't have a landscaper and say, hey, by the way, would you want to do this for free? Or, hey, I need somebody to go mow grandma's lawn the whole month because I don't have a landscaper. Is there anybody wanting to do it? And maybe you would do that first before asking, my son, but most of the time you won't get that response, or you don't have so many of the family members who communicate that well or can't communicate. But if you want to blast out an email that says, hey, I need a landscaper next month, does anybody want to volunteer? If not, I got to hire somebody else. And then you've put them on notice that you're really going to hire somebody else if you don't want to step up and do it for grandma for free, or whatever. Anyway, just make sure you've disclosed everything, that you're not hiding anything, you're not trying to be dishonest. Full disclosure. Okay, now we're going to get down to compensation. This is always an interesting topic. And it's something as a conservator, as a guardian, that you want to consider. With a probate case, your fees are statutory, so you cannot negotiate your fees or hours. So this does not pertain at all to probate. In a trust, you're not going to complete this petition anyway. Most of the time, a trust will say the trustee can be paid reasonable fees. What's reasonable to you might not be reasonable to somebody else. So you get into trying to figure out what are you considered reasonable. Say you are a fiduciary and you're handling a case, you can charge a whole lot more than somebody who is not a fiduciary. So really you have to figure out what is a reasonable fee for trust administration or as a trustee. But we're only going to discuss this as a conservator and or a guardian. So a lot of times this is your parent, or this is your sister, brother, could be something else. You might feel like, I really can't charge them for doing this. I feel horrible. I don't want to feel like I'm taking money from mom. Hun, please, I see this all the time and I fully understand your thought process, but you deserve also to be compensated for all this work you're doing. And this accounting is work. You deserve to be compensated if you have to take time off of work to attend a hearing, or you need to take time off of work to take mom to doctor's appointments, or you need to, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff. And not that you really want to say you should completely liquidate mom's assets and give it to yourself and award yourself. I'm not saying that. Please use reasonableness in your thought process. But you're entitled to be compensated. And you have to think about it this way, even if that's mom. You might have a bunch of brothers and sisters who aren't doing a doggone thing, and you're stressing over doing this accounting. You're stressing over making sure you reconcile the bank statements every month. You're stressing over making sure you're getting interest. You're stressing over, you have to review that every transaction on the bank statement has somebody scammed or charged a charge that you didn't make. You're going to court, you're filing petitions, you're filing inventory and appraisals, you're reviewing what's coming back on the inventory and appraisals. You're doing so much work. You are entitled to compensation, but be reasonable. You can't come in and say, Mom really only has $5,000 in cash, but has a house that you're not going to sell. And yes, the house is money, but if she only has $5,000, you can't come in and say, great, I want $5,000 as compensation. No, the court is not going to approve that. You're not taking every dollar she has. But you may say, I want 500. I want 1,000 because I deserve it. I've done so much work. There's nothing wrong with asking, and it's not against mom. It has nothing to do with mom. Think of it this way. If mom or family member did not have you and they had to go out and hire a professional fiduciary to fill in for you or to take over the job for you, they would have to pay a whole lot more than they're paying you. So, a professional fiduciary, let's just say, I could tell you that Contra Costa Superior Court used to have a local court rule on what is reasonable fees. For a non-professional fiduciary, it used to be 50 an hour. Then some years ago, that was increased to $75 an hour. I typically like when people stick to the 50 an hour. I've never seen a pushback from the court. I've never seen anything like that. And especially if you're doing it for mom, sister, brother, I think it's really reasonable. Professional fiduciaries could get 150, could get 200, could get 225, whatever their rate is. You can tell that's a huge difference. So understand when you're doing these, yes, you may feel bad you're taking it from mom, but if mom didn't have you and had to hire a professional, she would lose a whole lot more money. So why not be compensated for your time and things of that nature? Now, there's a few reasons why you might say, yeah, no thanks. To be paid as a conservator from mom, you are legally supposed to put on your tax return those monies you were paid from by mom. Now, whether people do that or not, I'm not going to comment because I will be on the wrong side because I have done tax preparations. I'd be on the wrong side of that and say likely not. But you are legally supposed to claim the money mom pays you in conservatorship funds, if that's the case, and also in probate administration funds. As opposed to if you just waited until distribution time, so mom passes away, then this money flows down, and inheritance is not a taxable event. So sometimes people will say, yeah, I don't want to collect, especially say you're a conservator and you're only beneficiary. You may say, I don't want conservator fees now. I'll just wait till the end or the time comes where I'll get it from mom anyway. And that may be a case where you would not collect your conservator fees here. And if that is the case, I still like to indicate to the court how many hours you put in. I want it to be shown, hey, I put in so much hours, this is what I did. I managed her account. I visited her at the home. I sold the automobile. I sold the vacation home, so on and so forth. I've missed works to attend hearings, but I waive conservator compensation. So if you do not want to be awarded any money, you would indicate at the end of your sentence after you've described how many hours, what you've done to help mom, you would say conservator waives compensation. So you would put that here. You would also put it down in your prayer, which we will get to. And so you do not need to put in here. Now, you really do not need to account any more than included here, meaning you will not have to turn in a timesheet that says on this day, this many hours, what exactly you did, and turn that in. This will be sufficient unless the court has reason to believe that there might be something wrong with what you're stating. Like, say, for instance, somebody objects and says, she's never been to the damn home to look in on the conservatee one, then you shouldn't be conservator. But the court may then come back and go, hey, by the way, can we see a timesheet? Or maybe the timesheet would help you explain into greater detail the date, the time, and all what you described up here. So please continue to keep records, but it would not be turned in unless the court asks for it. Everybody clear on that? We good? Okay, attorney compensation. If you do not hire an attorney and you're doing this on your own, you would still use the words attorney compensation. And in the case, you would say conservator did not retain the services of an attorney. That's the end of your sentence. I didn't hire an attorney, so nothing to discuss here, right? If it was that an attorney was hired, one, you wouldn't be completing this form, the attorney would, and they know to include this information. And they will need to attach their timesheet, which you would see is here, and they also need to complete a declaration, which states to the court their bar number, how long they've been in practice, things that you would know. You'll see it. There's an attorney declaration, and this attorney requests fees of this amount. That's pretty low for a conservatorship, but you get the gist of it. So likely if you're a pro per, you will just state conservator did not retain the services of an attorney. Continuing on, very important that you indicate this. Veteran benefits. It's very important that you tell the court whether the conservatee is or is not receiving money from the Department of Veteran Affairs. Very, very important that you tell the court that, because there are other obligations then that have to be met if they are receiving money from the Department of Veterans Affairs. So in this case, it has been indicated. It is very important whether you state whether the conservatee is in a state hospital. What a lot of people ask me, well, what is considered a state hospital? A state hospital is typically like a mental health hospital. It could be somebody with extreme developmental conditions. It could be, and those, it could be even in some cases a jailed state mental hospital. Rarely you see this, but there are cases where they would be confined to a state hospital, but most of the time it's the conservator during the conservatorship, the conservatee has not been a patient in a state hospital. That doesn't mean a local hospital. It doesn't mean an emergency room. It doesn't mean your regular hospitals. This has to do with totally different thought process, whether mental hospital, judicial hospital, which would jails. It's a totally different thing. So careful on answering this. This does not mean your regular hospital. And it doesn't mean a care facility type of medical hospital. It really has a completely different meaning. Correct. Rehab is not a state hospital, really, unless it was something like, even when you get to this, say the state ordered, which that's a really tough thing. It really doesn't happen. Order somebody to go to rehab, you might want to indicate something of that separate. But you really want to make sure you tell the court these two things. Okay, conservatee's address. We're going to get to this tricky stuff that I don't like. Conservatee's address. Let's say you're a conservator. Your conservatee still can live part-time on their own. Maybe they're really good during the afternoon. So you have either a health aide come in the morning, get them breakfast, get their medicines, get them dressed, get them ready for the day, and then they kind of just sit in their rocking chair, their sofa, or whatever, and they just kind of piddle about the day, but they're really not doing any cooking. You don't have to worry about like dementia where they'd leave the faucet on or the oven or stove on, or there's no real immediate danger. You have the ring camera, you're able to watch them. You have somebody on call if, God forbid, you saw something in the house that just didn't look normal, things like that. But they're sometimes home alone. I don't like giving their address if they are home alone, because somebody else can pick this petition up, and if they are not, if they have bad thoughts of, let's go rob them. We know the conservatives home by themselves. They're an older woman, and we could get in easily. They'll never hear us. They got hearing aids, or who knows? I just don't like to put the conservatives in this kind of situation. If they're in a care facility, yes, I will indicate the care facility, because they have their own safety and security measures at the facility. But there may be things like, specifically, and I'm going to use Alyssa's comment, a rehab. You might not want all the family members to really know that's what's going on. So you might just indicate the conservatee is still in the same center they were when I was appointed, or something like that. And that will tell the court, like the court knows based on your case, if things are sensitive or not. You, as the conservator, need to remember things are sensitive. When a conservatee gets conserved, they feel embarrassed. They feel like people are going to look at them differently, like they're old, or they don't know, or they get really embarrassed that they forget things, or that they may have to use incontinence or whatever. Please, please, please make sure you're just maintaining the integrity and you're making sure you're just not leaving your conservatee vulnerable and you're maintaining a little bit of privacy for them. That's all I can say on those comments. So account statements. You are going to tell the court that you are going to submit all bank statements from the beginning of your account period till the end. Well, you will not attach them to this petition. Oh my God, please, no, do not do that. They have to have a separate cover page. They are confidential, meaning no one can go to the courthouse and pull them. They are in a totally different thing. And after you, for conservatorships, after you do your first accounting, any accountings after that, you only need to turn in the bank statement that shows the balance at the beginning of your account period and at your end. So you are not going to turn in every single month in between. But that's after the first one. We need to show the court that you realize what you're doing, you know what you're doing, you're confident in what you're doing, and the court will want to see that at the beginning or your first one submitted. Anytime after that, you will only need to submit the beginning and ending because the court knows, okay, we're good. We're going to trust the accounting. And if we have questions, though, we can ask you for more bank statements later. But please do never include them with this petition. They are confidential. You don't want anybody can pull this petition. I can go to the court right now and go, hey, give me a copy of the petition for the conservatorship of Jeannie, and they'll give me a copy. And if your bank statements are attached, I know where she banks. I know the account number that she's banking at. I know how she spends her money. If I'm a fraud person, which there's so many out there nowadays, I'm going to attack I'm going to know everything and you're going to be in trouble because you've got to stop me in what I can accomplish with all the information you just handed over to me by filing it with the court, and it is available for public viewing. So make sure your bank statements are confidential. You have a separate cover page and they're filed differently. Do not attach them here. Plus, if you even did that, the court is going to give you a very stern, ugly comment that you just now violated the integrity of the accounts, and they will suggest you now close them all down, open new ones, anything else like that. It is 12. Some people have to leave. I'm almost done. If you wish to say, please do. I'm going to continue. If not, we give this class again every couple of months. Check in. You can take it as many times as you want. I hope it's been helpful. I gave you my email address. Rex included his. Let me know if you have any questions. So please, you don't have to tell me you're logging out. Just go ahead and leave, and then I'm just going to continue on for those who can stay. So Alyssa, thank you, honey. Go ahead and leave, and you can hear the rest of the recording in another time, or if you've got everything, great. I see a raised hand. Yes, Yen.
Yeah, I'd like to find out, do you have any example teaching us how to use the spreadsheet to track the expenses?
No, ma'am. That's something you're going to have to learn how to use Excel on your own. There's nothing. A lot of people who do accountings don't use Excel. They will use the actual standard forms, which are fillable. So there's no teaching of how to use Excel. That's just something you'd have to learn. You can go on YouTube, you can go, there's so many places on the internet. If you do a search that's how do you do use Excel, there's a million YouTubers out there that can teach you Excel, but we don't, honey.
You mentioned earlier there was some kind of template that you use cost $150. Is that in an Excel form or a
That's
spreadsheet?
Excel and that's Rex's, so that would be different than me. I'm separate from Rex. That's
Oh,
something he sells, sweetheart. You would have to contact him.
so another question is that if the court requires for the accounting, uh, does it have a very special format they have to submit?
On the accounting, you can use Excel for all schedules except for the very first one, which is the GC 400 sum. It must be on the GC 400 sum form, but that's the only one that requires a specific form, and it's that first page. The rest can be either Excel or using the court's schedules.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to continue quickly through. So we have capital changes. The only reason you would indicate capital changes is, say, for instance, you sold a bunch of stock, or your CD account, if there was a CD, your CD account reached maturity and you maybe opened up another CD, you would want to indicate this here that you've done that, and there will be other examples of that. Your statement of liabilities, remember when we discussed this earlier, where the excuse me, finally I sneezed. We had a promissory note or a deed of trust. You may not know this, you may know this. There could be a reverse mortgage, something you might want to indicate if you know this information, the monthly payments, if you know the interest rate, if you know this. Most of the time you don't know this. But you could limit this to just say there is a reverse mortgage with Downey Bank. If the balance the balance that you're aware of is this dollar amount, the monthly payments, it's a reverse mortgage, so there are no monthly payments, but there is a balloon payment at the end. I do not suggest these, but many people do. The problem you have is if you have a reverse mortgage and the conservatee goes into a home or a facility, and the reverse mortgage has very strict rules that if that conservatee does not live at that residence for a specific time, and you would have to check with them, but it could be 6 months, it could be 9 months, it could be a year, it could be 3 months. They will call the full loan, meaning you put your conservatee into a care facility, they've been there a year, you go to do your accounting and realize, oh, damn, they've been in this facility a year. And the reverse mortgage company may call the loan and say, okay, right now you owe me 124,855 because the conservatee is no longer in that home. What are you going to do? You would have to file an emergency petition with the court to say, hey, I need permission to sign a listing agreement. I need to get this house for sale. The reverse mortgage company is calling the loan. I didn't want to sell the house. I don't have no choice right now. I cannot, the conservatee does not have $124,000 to pay off the reverse mortgage. and then you're stuck in an ugly situation where you've got to sell that home as quick as possible. You're probably going to get a very low rate of sale because people will know you're trying to quickly sell it. So they're going to, do lower offers and stuff like that. And you're going to be in a little bit of a pickle here. Because again, the court has to approve the sale. We've got to get a probate referee involved. There's so many things that start going. So careful and make sure that you know if your mom, your sister, your brother, your whatever has a reverse mortgage on their property or not. If it's a regular mortgage, that those rules don't apply. I'm talking reverse mortgage only. Okay, so now we're getting down to special notice. Please understand that not all cases have a special notice. And what does that mean? Anybody in this entire US or probably world, if they wanted, I guess, could pay $40 to the court and turn in what's called a request for special notice. That could be on a conservatorship case, a guardianship case, a probate case. They can file for $40 a request for special notice. What does that mean? What that means is if I file a request for special notice, that means every single time you as the conservator file any papers with the court, and I'm talking any papers with the court, you've got to send me a copy of that. And now that doesn't matter if you don't know them. That doesn't matter if you don't want to send them copies. It doesn't matter if you don't like how they comment on you. It doesn't matter. Once they file that form, you must send them a copy throughout the entire conservatorship or until they release that request for special notice. So what will happen? They file a request for special notice on through the court. You will get a copy of that request for special notice. You will have to remember that every time you file something with the court that you need to give them or send them a copy. And every time that you have to file documents, you must indicate their name and address that they filed a request for special notice, and you must indicate their name and address here, and you must include them on every notice of hearing, on every petition you file. You have to include them on everything. So it's very important that you indicate to the court whether a request for special notice has been filed or not. And you will know if it's filed. So careful on that. You must state in here whether or not anybody has filed this request when you turn in your accounting to the court, because this tells the court whether they need to make sure you gave copy to the person or they will not hear the case. So say for instance you indicate right here, yes, Susie Brown requested or filed a request for special notice. Then they look at your notice of hearing, which is a second document, and see Susie Brown isn't on that notice of hearing. Guess what they're going to do? They're not even going to look at your case. They're going to say, sorry, you need to give Susie Brown at least a 15-day notice and a copy of this petition, or we're not going to hear your case. They're going to continue your case out. That will likely be 3 or 4 months because the courts are so backed up. And then, here we go again. You're sitting and waiting all this time to be heard. So make sure this is an important thing. It doesn't happen in every case, and usually it's pretty in rare cases. Other thing that I must also say with probate cases, which make them a little bit different, is sometimes your beneficiaries will take advances against their final distribution. In that case, the company that gives them a cash advance will send you notice of that cash advance. They will file it with the court. They will file a request for special notice, and they're watching to make sure that you're not distributing any money to that beneficiary without paying them first. So a lot of times you will see the advance inheritance advance companies do a request for special notice. Okay, now we're getting down to the prayer. So basically, the whole top part is, Your Honor, I just want to tell you everything that happened during this accounting period when I was appointed, all the assets I took control of, and I managed them frugally, and everything is just great, right? So now, what do you want the court to do? You need to tell them, I want you to look at this. I want you to throw it in the garbage. What do you want them to do, right? So typically your prayer will state something like this. Whereas the conservator prays, and this does not mean, and I know some of you are, we all have different religious backgrounds or not religious, or it has nothing to do with that. Please just, it's just a respectful word to the court. What are you asking or hoping the judge considers and rules on? Use, think of that in your head. So that this account be approved, perfect. Here's one of the things that I forgot to mention with your accounting when you submit them. Understand, one of the main purposes of an accounting, especially for a conservatorship and a guardianship, it's also good for a trust administration and very good for a probate. So all four is, once the court approves your accounting and there is a hearing and you get a signed order that says this accounting is approved, no beneficiaries can come back later and contest anything you did in that account period. So you are now relieved of the responsibility and liability of everything that happened during that account period. You want that. You do not want beneficiaries of a conservatee to come back 10 years later and go, hey, you didn't put the money in a interest-bearing account, now I'm suing you. No, you had your accounting approved by a court. You indicated this, that, or the other. And because the court approved your accounting, they cannot come back and hold you liable later. So this is a very good thing for you, that all the expenses, the selling the house, the selling the car, the donating the car, whatever it is, you are relieving yourself of liability only during those periods of accounts that are approved by the court. Now, that doesn't mean what hasn't been approved by the court is no longer your liability and responsibility. I'm only talking what has been approved by the court. So by this one sentence that the court approves and settles this account, that means by this time, and that they're hearing this case, which is 3 or 4 months out, people have had plenty of time to object if they wanted to. There's been no objection. So once the court approves it, you're no longer responsible for anything that happened. Now, I say that, but if you purposely violated or misled the court and you did something you really shouldn't have, then that doesn't cover you. You're still responsible. But if you honestly did and you honestly reported what you did to the court, then it is fully covered. that you're telling here in the second line item as conservator, you want the court to approve this account, that you want the court to approve your sale of the automobile. Again, this line item would not be here if you were not selling an automobile. You would not have this line item for furniture if you weren't selling furniture. Now we're getting down to, you asked for compensation in the petition, so now you want the court to order you compensation, pay your attorney, you asked for that, and you will also, or you would put in here, you would not include a sentence about an attorney if you didn't hire the attorney, because you already said up top that you didn't hire an attorney, so you wouldn't put it in the prayer. You don't need the court to consider anything. And then lastly, you always want to include that the court is allowed to grant anything else that they deem proper, right? You have full control, judge. If you want to say you didn't like that the flowers died in front of the house, the judge wouldn't know that, so I'm making this up. But if the court wanted to say that, honey, feel free, say it right here. You can add whatever you want. I give you permission. You're not really giving the court permission, but you are. And then you're going to date it. And if your attorney completed this, they will have this information, but we're going to skip this here. It's going to be just you signing it as conservator. One more important step is to always, every time you file a document, include the verification. Your wording should not change from this verification, so copy it word for word. I, David Lowry, or you can just put I, state the following. I'm the conservator. The account includes all of the schedules, and it's true and correct to the best of my belief and knowledge. Most importantly, I declare under penalty of perjury under the state of California that all of the information in the accounting and petition are true and correct. This is what will trip you up if you have lied to the court and you sign this and you knowingly lied to the court. The court can come back and you can be sanctioned. You could possibly serve jail time. You can serve whatever the court is appropriate that the court gives you, because you've stated under penalty of perjury, that's very important, that the information is true and correct. You've dated it, you've signed it. And then lastly, well, here's part of the sample. Remember, I told you about the separate cover page for your bank statements. That is here. Oh, he didn't include it. But you would go down a few line items and you'd go down to about line 24, and it's all going to be blank, but you're going to put Exhibit A. Usually I put it in 26 font. I want it bigger. I bold it. And that's the only thing that will be on that page is Exhibit A. And then so what will follow? After Exhibit A, when you file with the court, you want the GC 400 cover page of your summary of your accounting, and you want all your schedules to follow behind this. And that will be your total submission. Now, one last thing, and I'm at the very end, is you now will have to complete an order. If you look at this petition, it's only the petition. You should also know within this petition, there's nowhere for a judge to sign it. There's no place. A judge cannot sign a petition. So you will have to, and we don't have time in this course, which is why we don't teach it, you have to prepare a separate order that typically will say order for, and then you'll repeat all these line items. There's quite a few things you'll repeat on the order, like appointment, your bond information, the period of account. There's quite a few things you'll repeat on the order. And then when you get down to the part that's at the end that the judge has to review, it is ordered that the account is approved and settled. It is ordered that the conservator account is approved. No, I wouldn't write that again. That's the same wording. It is ordered that the sale of the conservatee's automobile is approved. It is ordered that the sale of the furniture is approved. It is ordered that it is ordered that the conservator is authorized and directed to pay himself, herself, the sum of $500. It is ordered that the conservator be authorized and directed to pay attorney $3,500 for his services. It is, and then again, sometimes I'll include that the court may include any other relief that they deem proper. And then I will put a date, leave it blank because this is the date that the judge would sign it. And then I will put here, judge of the superior court. I will not put their name. They will then sign right here. None of this will be here. They will sign right here. And once you get this order back, dated and signed, you know you're clear. Dang, I'm off to the second accounting and I'm ready to go. So that's it all. I want to hear comments from the people who are still here. What do you think? I know it was a lot. Was it helpful? What do you think? We're done. Nobody ever wants to talk. Unmute. You're able to talk. Thank you, Lynetta. Anybody else want to say anything?
I really wish I had seen this course before we applied for the conservatorship.
Because I'm scared to answer why.
Because I've gotten the runaround from my attorney and fiduciary and have spent thousands of dollars. We're 3 years into the conservatorship and no financial anything's been filed.
Oh, I'm so sorry, honey. I'm very sorry to hear that. Because I work in conjunction and they are my colleagues, I don't comment on fiduciaries or attorneys and what work they do or don't do.
I understand.
But you can see why it's important. You can see the information that you need for the accountings. You can see why it's important. If you look back again, I'm hired by many, many, many law firms to prepare the accountings and or review them. So I'm taking on a different hat depending on what I'm looking at. So a lot of people ask me, hey, Tom, I got this accounting. What are you looking for? Well, I just showed you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the inventory and appraisal. I'm looking for the date you got appointed. I'm looking at the bank statements. And if you're a beneficiary, you're not necessarily getting the bank statements, but I'm looking that the bank statement balance matches. I'm watching what income has come in. For instance, if I know there's rental property, I better see rental income every single month. If a month goes, if there's a skip in that rental income, I'm asking why. And they may tell me, oh, during COVID, certain people, renters were not paying rent, or some other reason, or we were repairing the roof of the house that month, so we asked or we paid for the person or the renter to go in a hotel, and so they didn't pay rental income, or whatever the case may be. But I'm asking because again, you can see how important this is, whether you are a beneficiary, a conservator, a guardian of a minor, a probate beneficiary, a beneficiary of the trust. If this comes to you and you toss it in the garbage because you don't really understand it and you don't know what it says or can't comprehend what it's supposed to be, and you wait over a certain amount of time, you waive your right to object to it. So you can't say later on, oh, I took this course with Tamara 5 years after the fact, and I found out I should have been looking at this. Let me go back. Let me look. No, I don't like this one, a line item. You paid yourself, half of the amount in the bank account. That's stupid. You can't object now. You waited too long. So you want to know, what am I looking at? What is this information telling me? And if you know what you're looking at and what it's telling you, you also now know how to put it together if you had to do it, because you understand both parts. You understand looking at it. Okay, what are they telling me? And I can see income, I can see what expenses they paid. If you take beginning assets, add your receipts, take away your expenses, all that will equal what your ending assets are. And then you're like, great, it all matches. I don't need to worry about it. They did a great job. Carry on, right? That's what you hope for in every single accounting. But sometimes these accountings are prepared by people that don't necessarily really understand what an accounting is and what information's out there. And I see time and time and time again many accountings that are done very wrong. And the people didn't understand what they were reviewing and what they were looking at, so nobody contested it. And then when they finally see what they're looking at and knowing what they're looking at, they go, now that was all wrong, and they shouldn't have sold this, and they also had jewelry, they didn't report it. And I'm like, yeah, honey, you're too late. Like, we could have done something long ago. But so really listen, put your situation or your assets in place of our samples, and really look at one if one has been delivered to you and say, do I know what this says and what it means? And if I don't, I'm immediately writing that attorney that prepared it or the conservator who repaired it and say, whoa, 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 hold on. Please further explain this. Please tell me why you paid yourself. If the conservatorship only had 5,000 in cash, why are you paying yourself $3,000, which is more than half, and leaving this poor person penniless? Or, watch and learn and look at it, and then you can understand the importance of it. Is that helpful, honey, to you? And I'm talking to Pam, who asked the question specifically. I'm giving her a minute. I think she's trying to figure out how to unmute.
Exactly. I just kind of wondering what I do now that I'm in this position.
What position, sweetheart?
We're 3 years into the conservatorship, and I have been bugging the attorney and the fiduciary for years now to get the information to file, or
Let
for
me
them
tell
to
you
file.
this. I cannot tell you because you have an attorney and you have a fiduciary. But I'm going to
We no longer have an attorney. They kind of fired me when I wouldn't pay one of the bills.
Okay. But let me overall state this instead, because I know Rex records this and it goes across the internet and blah blah blah. What I can say is, for any conservator, administrator, guardian, trustee, if a beneficiary requests an accounting, and Rex showed you like the little letter that you can do, they only have 60 days, 2 months to provide you an accounting. If they do not provide that accounting to you, you file something in court, a petition in court that says, I've asked for an accounting. They have not provided it to me. They've basically broke their fiduciary duty, and now I want them replaced.
Perfect.
You have every right to do that. And the court also, though, will give the opportunity to the conservator at the time, the administrator, the guardian, the trustee, to answer, because maybe the trustee will come back and go, oh, hold on a minute. What happened was, it was a bunch of businesses, it was a bunch of real property, it was a bunch of stock. I had a hard time getting the information from the banks. I know one law firm I'm doing an accounting for, they've actually had to subpoena bank statements, and that subpoena, even though they've issued a formal subpoena for the bank statements, we've been on hold a year and a half waiting for that bank to release bank statements. In that case, that's not fair to say that conservator needs replaced. No, that conservator and that attorney is doing every damn thing in their power to get the information to do the accounting, right? That's a totally one-off situation that could happen. But the court will give that person an opportunity to explain themselves on why they couldn't get it to you. And if that explanation is not good enough, the court will immediately suspend that person and put another fiduciary in their place, put another attorney in their place, put somebody you could petition the court yourself to replace that person. There's so many options, but that's something you need to discuss further with an attorney on how that all goes. But again, be very careful if you are a conservator also, and you get a accounting request by any beneficiary, realize you have 60 days. That's a hop, skip, and a jump. Like some people say, it'll take me 60 days to gather the information, Tam. And I'm like, you better go quicker. So realize and understand the importance of this. Beneficiaries are scared that you're not monitoring and treating the assets like they're your own, and you're just flubbing them off like, oh, I don't care if the house sits, there's weeds, there's cockroaches, there's, utilities aren't paid, so now the pipes are probably frozen, and it hasn't had electricity, so the refrigerator that's in there, all the food in there is gone rotten. You never want that situation. And if you're a beneficiary, you don't want that situation either. So by asking for different accommodations because that person is not fulfilling their duties, you have that right to do so. But remember, the other beneficiaries, if you get appointed, have the right also. Most of the time, all they're really asking for is an explanation of when I'll get it or why I haven't got it. And it has to be a real good explanation. You can't say I've been in the hospital for 2 months and I've then gotten a car accident. Well, that person immediately will think, well, then somebody else needs to be appointed in your place because you've got so much going on. I think somebody else needs to watch what's happening. You have those rights. But this was more teaching you, if you're in the situation where you have the appointment, how do you get it all submitted to the court and what the data is as a whole.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Because we're going to close down. We're 38 minutes out. I told you I talk too much. I told you that at the beginning. No more? Okay, remember you can always come back and take the class as many times as you want. So if you need a refresher, please come back. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the afternoon. I'm off to lunch. And if you have any questions, again, you can either contact myself or Rex. We do not work at the same company, so if you send message to him, I do not see it. If you send it to me, he does not see it unless you CC both of us. But feel free to contact us, get your questions answered, or come back to the next class. And with that, I'm going to say thank you and hope to see you later or not. And good luck on your accountings. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Now I got to close.